Welcome back. So my op-ed today over at HartmannReport.com is titled, "Guilty, Is Trumpism a Movement or a Cult?" It's also published over at thenewrepublic.com. And the point that I'm making in this article, and I'm not going to dwell on it at length because I made the same point on the air yesterday, is that there is a difference between a movement and a cult. A movement is based on ideas. A cult is based on a person. Charles Manson ran a cult. Jim Jones ran a cult. Huey Long ran a cult. In pretty much every case, and now movements, you know, Barry Goldwater was head of a movement. The Confederacy was a movement. It was not a cult. It was not based on one person. It was based on an idea, you know, the superiority and supremacy of white people, basically. But you know, it could be a very toxic idea and a lie, a false idea, but it's an idea. And that's why, you know, movements survive. Movements last. They go long beyond the lifetimes of their founders. And sometimes, you know, cults turn into movements, very rarely, usually in the context of religions. Seventh-day Adventists is probably a great example of that, which is now a respectable religion. I have a lot of respect for Seventh-day Adventists. And they're vegetarians, by the way. They live lightly on the earth, and they live longer than most other Christians. But you know, it started out as a cult, as a doomsday cult, basically. You know, Ellen White thought the world was going to end and led her followers up to the top of the mountain, and then the world didn't end, and they had to reinvent it, essentially. So, and I realize it's not a particularly good history of Seventh-day Adventists, but, you know, like I said, I like them. In fact, I've attended Seventh-day Adventist churches. So, bottom line, cults die when their leaders are either dead or discredited. You know, when Manson went to prison, his cult fell apart. And so I think it's really important that we all recognize that right now the Maga movement, which is referred to as a movement, is not actually a movement. It has no organizing principle. There is no coherent set of values or ideas or policy prescriptions that Maga promotes, other than basically hating on people who aren't white and who aren't Christian and who aren't male. And those are not, I mean, those are old ideas, but they're not enough to maintain a movement, frankly. So instead, what you've got is a cult, and there are several characteristics of a cult. One is that a cult is always about the leader. The leader is, you know, the cult is about fealty, about loyalty to the leader. A cult is when people criticize the cult. Cults do not tolerate criticism. Typically, when a person criticizes the cult leader, they are banished. Just ask, you know, Liz Cheney or Adam Kinzinger about that. And so my point is, and I really believe this to be true, is that when Trump loses in 2024, and I think he will, if he doesn't, you know, we're going to go through hell. Let's just, you know, put that caveat out there. If Trump wins this fall, the United States is going to get a taste of what Chile experienced, or what Germany experienced, what Italy experienced, what Spain experienced. I mean, it won't be unique, but it will be very, very painful. But even that will not continue after the death of Trump in all probability, because again, it's not a movement, it's a cult. Just like, you know, after Hitler died, after Mussolini died, after Franco died, after Pinochet died, their cults fell apart. So, which I guess arguably is the good news. Now, the bad news is I don't think Trump is going to spend one day in jail. You know, his lawyers are going to be able to drag out his appeals for probably decades. I mean, probably long after he's dead. You know, so, but I think that, and then when Trump is gone, and presumably that'll be next year, I think that the GOP will turn their back on him. I really do. I think as quickly as they have embraced him or re-embraced him, they're going to walk away from him. Just like they did briefly after January 6th. Because he will no longer have political power after the election, after Joe Biden is sworn in for a second term. So, and you know, that's good news for America, you know, Donald Trump being basically purged from the party. And that will let the GOP go back to being basically the party of Mitt Romney and John McCain, you know, the party that exists for the purpose of making the rich even more comfortable and making the lives of poor people even more miserable, and making corporations more profitable and increasing levels of pollution and letting banks rip us off and, privatizing Social Security and Medicaid. I mean, we all know the GOP agenda, right? Ruining our public schools and turning them into private academies and promoting a phony version of Christianity that Jesus would not recognize. They'll just go back to doing that, which is what they've been doing, basically since Reagan. In fact, arguably since Nixon. I don't think that the Republican Party will ever go back to being the party of Eisenhower. I think the right-wing billionaires have too strong a grip on it. But this MAGA death cult, there's another dimension of a cult. Herman Cain, showed up at a packed MAGA rally during, to show his loyalty to Trump, caught COVID and died. People die for cults.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
So enough of my rants. What say you? I'll pick up your calls on the other side of this break. Stay with us.